Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours with Cloud Posse, where we discuss the latest DevOps trends, AWS announcements, and Terraform insights, all sourced from our sweetops community. Plus, a live Q&A you can't find anywhere else. It's December 10th, 2025. I'm your host, Eric Osterman. Real quick, I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. Cloud Posse sells AWS reference architectures that get you production ready in just 2 weeks. So if you're curious to learn more, just go to cloudposse.com. How can you maximize today's session? First off, our format's very informal. You can engage as much as you'd like. You can ask questions. And if you're curious about any of our open source tools like Atmos, this is a great place to ask. For those in the recording, we host these calls live, so don't miss out. Just join us live by registering at cloudposse.com/officehours. Again, cloudposse.com/officehours. I do have one ask. If you find any portion of today's session valuable, share it with your team. You'll find the recording at youtube.com/cloudposse. It will be posted in just a couple of hours. So with that said, let's jump into what caught my attention this week. First one was something via Hacker News. If you're doing a lot of pull requests, especially like, with agentic coding, one nice thing to do is to stack your pull requests, but you might have tried to do that and then you run into this issue with just constantly having to have merge conflicts or rebasing that. Well, you can pretty effectively achieve that using git rebase with the onto flag. So you're basically rebasing your branch onto the other branch, and then when that branch merges, you can then rebase onto main again. But like as the author says, if you start stacking more than 2 to 3 this way, you're still going to enter merge hell. Which leads me though, honestly, with the advent of Cloud Code, the one thing I used to dread the most were merge conflicts. And now, like, if there's one thing I can call out the most that I don't have to worry about anymore, merge conflicts. I never deal with them anymore. Cloud always figures it out. Has that been your guys' experience as well?
Merge conflicts are always fun.
Yeah, they used to be an exercise, I think, in Git foo, but not anymore. Now it's prompt foo. So next one was, as you guys heard last week, there was a big CVE affected NextJS ecosystem, but the underlying CVE was this React to Shell. And basically, React wasn't properly deserializing the requests for server-side events, and that led to a potential remote code execution vulnerability. So if you are using any React apps, even if you're not using server-side, obviously for it to be worth anything, it probably has to be server-side, but even if you aren't using server-side capabilities of React, you should upgrade. Ghostty, we talked about them last week, how, it was just kind of cool to see an organic exchange between Mitchell Hashimoto on Hacker News, how he was surprised to learn somebody had created a Xterm alternative using Ghostty, using Wasm WebAssembly. The next announcement here on the Ghostty front is he has transferred Ghostty and all IP and everything into a nonprofit that is independently owned and operated, kind of like CNCF. I'd never heard of HackClub before, but it was pretty cool, and donated $150,000 as part of it. I think he kind of alludes to this down the road here about, he doesn't want anybody to think there's going to be another rug pull or anything like that. I'm sure Mitchell is not. It's just it was kind of sad how things turned out with Terraform, of course, and I'm sure he's trying to avoid association with what happened there in Ghostty. Any thoughts on this before we move on? Next one was Michael. I saw you shared this in our community, some of your best practices in using Terraform. For example, using one instead of the infamous splat hack that we had to do forever. Fortunately, yeah, that's good. One that I thought was interesting, I see it more and more, especially in a lot of other open source modules, is using the object style. And on the one hand, totally dig it. On the other hand, what I don't like about it is the documentation side of it. Like, this is not bad, and if you do the object method that you described here, then you should definitely thoroughly document what all those parameters are. But that's why we at Cloud Posse are still predominantly gravitating toward the variable approach, just because the document generation aspects of it. I think this is a no-brainer. Doing what you have here is a no-brainer when it comes to like root modules that have or embed a lot of other modules with a whole slew of parameters.
Oh, for sure.
I think that's a really good pattern.
Yeah, we tend to use that more like with our components than necessarily with our modules. But yeah, I really like that pattern too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this was a big one too, and I know it's documented in the Cloud Posse Terraform best practices guide, but double negatives in your variable names, that'll bite you real quick. So
it's a pet peeve of mine.
Yes.
I really hate having to think through the logic of what something says.
And then throw like some negation onto the conditional as well, like throw an exclamation point in front of it, and then you're really trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. One thing that I saw that Igor was doing in one of our examples as I was updating the docs, let me see. It's in a PR here. So we talked about this new pattern we have for app on ECS, which serves a lot of things. One, it shows you how you can run Atmos conveniently in individual repositories outside of your infrastructure monorepo. But two, it shows like a simpler example of just using Atmos with just dev staging prod and what that looks like without a huge organizational hierarchy and all the complexity that comes with that. But it also shows some cool patterns that have evolved at Cloud Posse that we use that are embedded in this example. So I thought I could show those. And it just ties into one of the things that what Michael was sharing there about passing inputs as objects. And we're doing that here in one of these examples, and I thought it was pretty nice. So let me pull it up here. If I go to defaults. So in this case here, what Igor is doing, this is a app component, so an app root module that has three inputs. It has an input for ECS, an input for VPC, an input for load balancer. And in our best practices at Cloud Posse, we like to separate Terraform by lifecycle. So like an application has a different life cycle from a database, which has a different life cycle from your network, which has a different life cycle from your accounts, and I can keep going on all day. So when you start breaking your architecture down like this, you can reduce the blast radius of changes, improve governance, make it easier for teams to contribute without risking jeopardizing other things. Because the blast radius is not everything, you don't have to be as careful about reviewing absolutely every change, because only the scope of whatever that component is what could break. So I really like it for all types of reasons. But one of the challenges is when you do that is you still have loose coupling with other dependencies. Like, I need to know the VPC IDE because that's where I'm going to deploy my database, my service, or I need to know the ECS cluster because that's where my task is going to go. So one of the things we have in Atmos is very easy state lookups for any other component in your architecture. And here we're doing those state lookups for doing that. What's cool about this is we're returning the entire remote state for the ECS cluster, the entire output section of the remote, not the entire remote state, all the outputs of the ECS cluster here by specifying dot. And then we're passing that as a map to ECS. So I just thought this was a pretty clean pattern for implementing a component that leverages components that were deployed elsewhere and deploys this ECS task. Let's see, was there a question here in the Zoom chat? Oh, and then Zoe points out that OpenTofu will bring that up as well. There's a new version there. All right, so added that. Next, next minor announcement was just IBM to acquire Confluent. IBM, I almost they're like the enterprise version of bending spoons. They're just buying up cash cow after cash cow, I guess, in these different areas. They, not that HashiCorp was a cash cow, but I'm guessing Vault has a lot of enterprise buy-in commercially. But Confluent, this was a 11 billion acquisition. I believe HashiCorp was a $6.4 billion acquisition. If you're not familiar with Confluent, they are kind of like the enterprise distribution of Kafka. Now they build a platform on top of that, and they have a lot of other things. But yeah, serious acquisition. Any thoughts on that before we move on? All right. This was pretty slick. Hopefully, this could make its way into the official Mermaid JS library. Someone has extended Mermaid. I haven't looked at the actual implementation, like how they went about it, or like if this is just wrapping Mermaid in some way. But I thought this is pretty cool, having the animated to see your traffic flows, because that's really kind of what's missing, is that visualization aspect on Mermaid diagrams. Also, if you don't know, Mermaid is natively supported in GitHub Markdown. So we actually, in the same example that I had up earlier, here's a great example of using Mermaid in your READMEs on GitHub, showing flows. Now, imagine if that was animated. It would just be a little bit cooler. All right, anything on that before we move on? I suppose this was probably a reInvent announcement, but Netflix, they've been famous for managing their own database clusters that have been, they're full on like patching kernels, patching Postgres to get the performance needs that they had. And they'd been holding off forever to move to RDS Aurora. It's like AWS was able to get them onto Aurora now, and they've seen a up to 75% improved performance on Aurora. This is interesting because I remember when Aurora had also serious performance issues compared to just RDS instances for certain workloads. So that's a testament at Netflix scale that RDS Aurora is, ready for prime time.
These charts are always super interesting because on the one hand, they demonstrably prove that, yeah, that's a viable approach. This clearly works. Objectively, this is a working thing. But it also lulls, I think, some maybe non-technical managers into thinking, yeah, we are Netflix scale. I'm sure this will also solve 75% performance improvements.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they've obviously tuned every single other possible thing they could have tuned. But what's also interesting is to see just how this has flattened out all their peaks, and it's a very nice flat graph.
I haven't read this yet. Do they go into that? Because I would assume the peaks are maybe like morning or evenings when people come in and watch. Is that what they related to, or is it just?
I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Good question, but don't know.
That's a stark difference, though, the before after.
Right. Yeah, self-managed versus Aurora Postgres. And And the last announcement on my list, let's see if this wakes up here again. Come on. There we go. Devcontainer support. So if you are using like the Code, Claude, IntelliJ, any one of the many modern editors, they have native Devcontainer support. And that's great. And I think it definitely makes a lot of sense when you live in the IDE because you're doing like web dev work and you have separately your browser open and all that stuff. I think that dev containers have proven themselves in another area very effective. I was first introduced to the concept kind of dev containers when I was using CoreOS back in the day, and they had a toolbox container, and I thought, oh, how cool is that? They have just one command, and it launched, because CoreOS, if you hadn't used it before, like it's this stripped down minimal operating system with none of the package management. It was just running a command on CoreOS was adding a command was a pain in the butt. But they shipped with a toolbox container. And in that toolbox, you had all the commands you wanted. It was a normal modern operating, it was a normal operating system like CentOS or something. You could install your packages and so forth. And that was the birth of geodesic. So if you go to GitHub Cloud Posse, we have a pretty popular repository called geodesic. And geodesic is a toolbox container. Now, the spec for dev containers came out years later, and that's what's been popularized. Geodesic itself comes with its own wrapper script if you want. It basically makes it very easy to install a shell script that then starts up geodesic. Because when you run commands on the command line, like all the Docker commands with all the flags, with all the environment variables, with all the mount points you need to add, with the entry point, it's a gnarly command. So what we wanted to do, and a big push at Cloud Posse has been consolidating the tool chain, reducing the number of moving pieces, reducing the third-party tool dependencies, building it all into Atmos, because there we have a solid testing framework, a solid documentation framework, and it just allows us to move faster and standardize our operations. So a lot of customers still use geodesic, and geodesic still has first-class support in our solutions and what we do as a toolbox container. But we wanted to get away from having to run like make files that then call Docker, that then launch a container and have a lot of bash foo, because we're trying to get away from bash. We're trying to have testable, repeatable Go code for everything that we do. So that's where we got in with dev containers. And let me go back here. So with the dev container support in the atmos.yaml, you can just define your dev containers in there. Note that dev containers are not components because they have no relationship really to stacks and environments. If anything, you launch one dev container and you do all your operations in there. The other cool thing is you can create multiple dev containers. So this is just an arbitrary name, Terraform. You can call it whatever you want. You could call it geodesic. You could call it like web dev. You could call it DevOps, whatever. And that then specifies an image that it should use. And then when you run it, it drops you in. And I'll show you an example of this shortly. The other cool things that you can do with this is you can also specify it supports the full dev container spec as it makes sense on the command line. So you can specify a dev container file, which is basically just JSON, and then reuse for, here's an example of using just a standard dev container file if you have one already. Recently this week, I saw someone else, or was it last week? I saw someone else was using Docker Compose for this. That's another alternative. You might be using Docker Compose to start your containers. Now, if you're in the Atmos ecosystem, though, this makes a lot more sense because this also adds identity. So if you've heard us talking, we have Atmos Auth, and Atmos Auth makes it super easy to log into your cloud provider, whether it's AWS, Azure, etc., and expose short-lived credentials. Well, how cool is it now that you can combine Atmos Auth with a dev container, so you can launch an ephemeral Docker container with a session that's authenticated with like AWS, and then run your commands in there. And when you exit the shell, all that is gone. So let me see here if this is ready to go here. All right, cool. So I'm going to start a terminal here. This a little bit bigger. All right, so hopefully you guys can see my screen. And the first thing I'm going to run is Atmos version. And here you can see I'm running the latest released Atmos version, which is 1.201. We'll have another release coming out shortly. There was one or two little bugs with this that we have already fixed that are in the main branch that we need to be released. So first thing I can do here is, for example, run Atmos dev container list, and I see my running dev containers. I can now start a dev container. I can now enter that dev container. So like Atmos dev container shell geodesic, and this and now I'm giving myself an identity. And now I'm dropped into that dev container. So no longer am I on a Mac anymore. Now I am in Ubuntu, and I can run all the commands that I'd normally run. The other thing you can do in Atmos is create aliases. So I've created a shell alias, so I can just run Atmos shell, and that drops me now into that dev container. It's a really nice experience. Now, if I don't want to attach to an existing one, I can say replace, and that first stops that container. Under the hood, this supports, that's interesting, yeah. Well, I guess something else we've got to fix there. I thought I just tested this and it was working fine, but yeah. Okay, yeah. So this is building the image. The issue here is this is the thing that pull request is aiming to solve that we just merged into main. Fixing, you can have a local Docker file with dev containers, right? And it'll build it on demand and then drop you into that shell. And that is the thing that we have improved and fixed. The other cool thing is you can, let me show you the bind mounts, or let me show you what the dev container file looks like. So this is a standard dev container that you could use with VS Code, IntelliJ, etc. And now you can use it with Atmos as well. This is specifying mount points that you can bind into the container, environment variables you want to set, any environment ends that you want to pass to the Docker build process, for example, and so forth. Any questions on the dev container support?
Is this quite super new, or has this been going for a wee while in the background?
Yeah, we started a few months ago, the implementation work, and it's just been going on in the background. And we finally got it to a stable point, all test passing. So we released it this past week, 2 days, yesterday or the day before.
That's well neat. I love the name as well. I'm sure that has a meaning, I'm guessing.
Which one?
The geodesic.
Oh, yeah, it's a long story. Couldn't think of a better name at the time.
Fair. I don't know. I like it. It sounds good.
Yeah.
Especially with the whole Terraform, Earthform, Geo. Earth,
yeah, exactly. There's a reference in there. The key thing here, though, is that it doesn't have to be this. It could be any dev container. There's a whole ecosystem of dev containers available out there. If you go to container.dev, that's where you can find other dev containers that people maintain.
Nice. And given that it's open source, it just makes it that much easier to get clone into any old server, pull it in, and run it if there's Podman or Docker installed.
Yeah, if you have Podman or Docker, then it just works that way. Obviously, Yeah, okay, so you need two things. You need Atmos and then Podman or Docker, and then the rest of your life is better. Or is it containers.dev, maybe?
Oh yeah, it's containers.dev.
Yeah, there we go.
That's one neat. And I just typed in setup geodesic into Google, and Cloud Posse was the first one that came up.
Yeah. Okay, that's perfect. And also just something kind of cool today that I did before this demo. Let me see here. Conductor. So everyone, I've talked a lot about Conductor on office hours. It is like if you reimagine what an IDE would be today from scratch with the advent of Cloud Code, Codex, and similar types of terminal-based agents, this is maybe what you would come up with. And I thought it was just really cool what I did here, what I was able to do here this morning. So we have our internal infra. So these here on the side here, these are repositories. And here are like all the features.
There.
Yeah, a lot going on in Atmos. Could you imagine trying to manage that many things going on, like with just regular cursor or VS Code? You'd have to have that many checkouts because they don't really make working with that many concurrent work trees easy. There are plugins for it. I tried to use it. It was not this convenient. So I have all these different repositories added. Here's the Infra Live one that I was just doing the demo with. And here I created just by clicking plus, I created a new workspace. And then what I was able to do was I just said, hey, here are the release instructions today from using geodesic with Atmos. Can you just set this up in our repository? And it one-shotted it. It created a perfect Atmos config with a Devcontainer config, and that's what the demo was based on. So this is a pretty cool installation pattern, right? Like you can literally just, hey, copy this prompt into your terminal and get this superpower. Any questions?
And I'm guessing this uses worktree support, is that right? In order to have like multiple versions of the same code. Nice.
Exactly. So here you can kind of see my work tree here. It's under this conductor folder. The workspaces are work trees and this one here.
Gotcha. I think I've seen the conductor featured a few times, and it's really coming through with a lot of powerful features.
Yeah, it's it convinced me to buy a new laptop. I was putting it off forever and ever, but now it's just having so many things running concurrently, I got a new laptop just for conductor.
It makes a difference.
All right. If you are a conductor user already, you might like some new features they just released as well. So here's like something that I'm working on. Let's see here. See changes requested. I can just now click this little chat button, the chat icon here, and it pastes in the CodeRabbit review comments, and I can submit those, and then Cloud goes to work. I'm using these tabs a lot, so you can create different contexts. Each one of these has a different context, so you don't have to. This is a little confusing because I started a message here, but and then when that goes to work, it'll just start grinding away at those. Other things that make it a real differentiator for me is, okay, first of all, I have direct access to the PR that's associated with this. If it's behind, I can. It lets me know the status of everything. I can just go click pull on that. If there's a merge conflict anywhere here, I'll see there's a merge conflict. Let's say this was a merge conflict. I could just click the button up here in the right that was going to say that I could resolve the conflicts. In this case, I'm committing and pushing changes. It also makes that part just easy. So once it finishes some work, it can construct the pull request, the commit and the commit messages for you. You can standard like diff view for anything that's changed as part of this. And you can also now restore. You can also see all your past workspaces now that you can restore them as well. So you have workspace history. What's cool also is natively integrated with linear. So I use this all the time. I can find open linear tasks and associate it with it, as well as entering in the planning mode, right? So you have to approve the plan before it gets to work and so forth. All right. Jump back. Oh, so that's all I got. Let's see. Let's check out the the Zoom chat here. Tim asks a question regarding dev containers. How much risk do you think there is mapping or exposing credentials into containers that someone else built? I mean, is it any more or less risk than what we're already doing, downloading any binary off of GitHub or running any npm install command, any brew command? I would say it's in the same realm of risk, runs the same risk of exposing credentials. If anything, maybe containers are less curated, but there's a lot of companies out there just downloading every container out there and scanning them so that they can get their next press release out there about finding another compromised container. But there's no need to run a third-party dev container. All you need is to start a Docker image, right? So if you at least trust, say, official images from Ubuntu, CentOS, etc., you can use that as your base image for any dev container. There is nothing magical about a dev container. I should have said that. There's nothing magical about it. It's just how you invoke it. It's how you start it. It's how you run it. And if you don't like a lot of crazy arguments on the command line to operate or just start a shell, then using the dev container spec makes that more convenient for you. It lets you codify what it is to run a container so you can share it with your team. Jeremy points out that Mermaid now does support architecture diagrams, and you can specify, icons or images to use. When it had just been released, I tried to use that ability and I wasn't able to get it to work, but I haven't tried it out lately. So Jeremy, have you been using the architecture feature of Mermaid diagrams? He says that the feature seems more stable now. So Mermaid, AWS architecture diagrams, for example. Yeah. So this is like what he's referring to, that you can now create these kinds of diagrams. And are those supported on GitHub Markdown as well? Do you know, Jeremy?
I don't think so for architecture, no.
That might be why it didn't work for me. Yeah. How was it?
Sorry, I think it was beta. Like it's not fully general available. I'm not sure if now it's a GA. Maybe it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, go up. It was architect beta. Yeah, T-Tone said see. So
just actually this week, or was the last week, I was going down this hole, wanting to add some richer diagrams for our Cloud Posse reference architecture, and I beat my head up trying to kind of figure out the best way of doing it, whether to use Mermaid, whether to bite the bullet and use Lucid Draw or Lucid Chart or any of the other systems. But when you've been working too much with Cloud Code, you can't go back to the old way of doing things, and it's impossible. So what I had really good luck with, and we'll probably have an update in the coming week or two, is just using some of the native React charting modules out there. And I came up with really beautiful architecture diagrams just using React with full animations, traffic flows, and all of that stuff. So I think I might be going more that route for future architecture diagramming.
Can you?
Yeah. So, one second. So, Jeremy, can you try doing that same thing though using AWS icons? Is there an AWS icon pack available on GitHub? What were you going to say, Mohammed?
Can you show us your React diagramming skills?
Yeah, let me see. Let me see if it's on a branch locally. Take me a second. I'll pull that up, Mohammed. In the meantime, anybody have some questions we can get answered today?
I believe Zoe had that announcement.
What was that?
Zoe had posted something. Does she want?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see here. Where's the? Oh yeah, that one. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So OpenTofu 1.11 was released today. Let's see, what is special? Oh, no way!
Yeah, it solves the count
Yeah.
issue that we always run into.
Yeah. We've been using enabled as a best practice in all of our modules for I don't know, 10 years now.
Yep.
So this is now a first class thing. Cool.
Also, one of our big things is it brings in ephemeral resources and write ones endpoints like Terraform has.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little behind on some things, but it's further ahead on other things, which has been really nice for us.
That is cool. Yeah, so you can have sensitive values that don't get persisted into the state, essentially now, which is supported in BSL Terraform. Wait, sensitive. Wait, or did I? Yeah, no, OpenTofu will not store this in the state. Perfect. All right. Any other interesting things to point out with this release or other announcements?
The only other one I've noticed is it uses a lot less memory than Terraform does now. My stacks were taking 8 gigs, and now it's taking like 4.
Really? With the latest release?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Do you know what they've done to optimize it?
I have not looked into it. Pretty much I've been so busy with other things, I've not dug into it. But I've been watching it, hoping that performance of Terraform could improve for our pipelines.
Yeah, that's been a problem. We've seen, I've brought up the example before where somebody had a massive factory inside of Terraform and it was taking 25 gigs of RAM to run a plan.
Oh, yeah.
but they are also a Atmos convert. So now they don't have that problem. All right. Any other interesting reInvent announcements that you guys found interesting? Maybe we didn't discuss it. Anyone go to reInvent? Have anything to report?
I went and I walked 5 miles a day.
5 miles a day. How many casinos was it in this year?
I don't know. I only went to the Venetian and Wynn and Caesar's Forum, but I think there was Mandalay Bay and maybe MGM. I can't remember.
What was the best talk you went to? Or did you go to the keynotes?
I checked the keynotes or some of them through just the live simulcast or whatever. AWS Transform, right? Looked pretty cool. There were, you know, a good amount of things that I saw in there that would either help in general, so you don't have to really use a partner if you're going to do like a map or something, or will provide, exponential value just to have that type of information, accessible to you through what I think it's a free service through AWS.
Yeah.
The other stuff that I looked at was SageMaker Unified Console. I'm not sure if that's like brand new or not, or if it was just released there, but I want to say it was just like mainly Transform that was like one of the big announcements there. But SageMaker Unified Console looks interesting to me. I have a lot of researchers that I have to deal with. So having a single pane is great for that.
Yeah.
Kiro looked pretty cool.
What is Gerald?
No, Kiro, Kiro.
Oh, Kiro. Yeah. Kiro. Yeah.
I think we've talked about that in here.
Yeah, people were alluding to, though, that they're taking it to the next level. What are the latest developments with Kiro?
I saw them attach it or provide access to it via an MCP servers, right? And they were able to just like natural language process ask Kiro, describe these EKS clusters, right? And it would reach out to the MCP, and if you have it set, it'll ask you every time it needs to invoke one or needs to pull them in, right? So it does have doesn't just automatically do it. It'll pull in those instructions, and you're authenticated via CLI, so it's going to reach out into your AWS environment and describe those, whatever it is you asked it, essentially. So it's like, Jarvis for your environment, I guess, from the Marvel universe. I don't know if that was that anything that's already been out there, or is that pretty new?
I think that use case was showing you how you can use it with the MCPs, kind of as the gateway into AWS. I think that's the part that's a little newer. I'm curious, is anybody using Kiro or Cairo as their daily driver yet?
I haven't. I was looking at it. I just haven't got past NeoVim yet. So
I did use Kiro for a couple weeks. I think it's nice for some of the spec-driven stuff. I found that was good. I think the MCP support is good. Is it replacing my sort of current combo? I don't think so. I think I still prefer Crush with the prompts that have parameters. I find they're just faster. And especially if you've got like a prompt that teaches your favorite model how to use something like what do they call it? HCL edit. Have you ever seen that tool? It just lets the model stop using grep and string replacement, and instead just use direct edits to Terraform attributes. So that it just,
Interesting.
For me, I've found that that's a lot faster. And I've also found that, parameterized prompts are faster because maybe you're starting out with a workflow and a totally new thing. I think it's strong. Also, something that I think I mentioned, OpenSpec has proven, I think I do like it better for spec style prompts. In my experience, it really does organize better. It does take a little bit more oomph from the model, though. You can't just use a light model. I found that in general, it's a funny one. I think it's touch and go. Some models are getting better, but if you have a smart enough one, then this works pretty well with Crush as well. And you just have a similar checklist format to Kiro, but it doesn't mean that Kiro is not good. It didn't fit my workflow, which is more CLI.
This is cool though. Thanks for
and this works nicer with Devcontainers, by the way. I think Kiro with Devcontainers wasn't very good for me. I found it was constantly confused with the Devcontainer actually. But maybe they're going to improve that at some point because they currently have the whole you run Devcontainers like, hey, this is a VS Code plugin, but we'll support it because we're basically VS Code. Some tools like I think Cursor, I think have tried a little bit better to make it so agents understand when you're doing a remote session.
Yeah. So Mohammed, I did find that those diagrams I was working on. So here you can see, and this is just using React. I forget which React library I was using, but I thought the diagrams looked pretty nice. That I was working through.
I like that.
One thing to mention, by the way, Eric, when I was messing with OpenSpec, I just realized how much something like Atmos would lean into the same style of generating prompts based on your repo and your tooling. Have you thought about doing anything like that?
I didn't understand. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah. So OpenSpec basically looks at your repo and generates a way of working with spec-driven prompting. But that's all it does. It just creates a bunch of sort of text files, and then it's up to your whatever you're using to read the agents.md and the project MD, and then follow those guidelines. So in a way, it's just a really simple. It's really, really light, and that's what I like about it. But I thought, in that way, Atmos does a lot of really, really light things to actually put a lot of organization down. Right? It's
what's interesting. It's almost like the ADR tool was ahead of its time, right?
And it is a lot like ADR tool, and that is what you'll see is just really all that OpenSpec does is do validation, really, and then it creates an error that is meaningful to the prompt using all the right terms, and that's why it's very effective with an AI prompt system, right? So if you had Atmos in the same way, just saying, hey, this doesn't look like a good change to this infrastructure because X, Y, Z, you could probably then iterate on that with something like you said, either Conductor or other tools that can read those files.
So that is interesting. I think in order to answer it, I have to take a little deeper dive beneath the surface to fully understand what they're doing. But I've been holding off on doing something like the ADR tool because I know how we're all working these days. But this could be inspiration looking at the OpenSpec, how that works, and if that could be something. Because what has worked really well for us in Atmos is moving towards doing PRDs So you can see that we've just written just a ton of PRDs for every new feature and every new thing that we're doing in Atmos, and then having Claude Code go implement that spec. Also, it's great.
Those, so I'll take a look.
Yeah.
That's in the Atmos repo. Right?
Yeah, that's in the Atmos repo.
Thanks for sharing.
And we have, and we're taking that, like every pull request, typically every new feature for the most part comes with a PRD. Like here's one, Dan is working to improve error messaging for Atmos auth. So we start with the PRD describing kind of how we think it should look. Obviously, we're working closely with Claude in just even developing the PRDs themselves. And then once we agree kind of on the aesthetics of the implementation, the details and the requirements, then we just tell it to go implement it, and it works pretty well. And actually, Jeremy, you were one of the first people, like this is going back, more than a year, to talk a lot about Claude Code. And I couldn't imagine using Claude Code because coming from Cursor or Copilot, you realize like, oh, I have to inspect every single line that it makes because it's going to go off the rail at some point and I'm going to have to stop it. But somehow with Claude Code, it's just so much better. It doesn't go off the rails as much. And you don't need, therefore, the IDE as much, I feel, working with Claude Code as you do with when I use Cursor or Copilot.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And again, I found that certain, and this is why I also use Crush, it has access to OpenRouter to a few models that are really nice. If anybody's looking for other models to try out there, I recommend Minimax M2, I think is what it's called.
Oh, you've been using Crush by Charm Bracelet?
Yeah.
Ah, interesting.
Well, because for the really light prompts, it's actually really fast. So one of the things that they don't really document well is they have prompts that inject basically text replacement into the prompt. And so if you have a stepwise process of a set of commands that you know that you need to run, like let's say you're running a validate, tofu init, tofu validate, tofu plan this, and then respond to these particular things, you can write it all in a set of steps that's prompted so that then if you're using even something really simple like Quinn, in about 2 cents of costs and 30 seconds, it runs all the commands exactly and it just prints out and reacts to all of that. So for really small commands, I found that I use this a lot. And this is for things like, oh, I found that I have this trunk says, I need to fix this bucket. It doesn't have XYZ. Or, oh, okay, but this is in dev, so I don't want to spend a lot of money. And so then it would go through and just ignore certain trunk things and whatever else. And you just in the prompt, you just codify what you prefer. But I admit that this is probably not what everybody likes to use because I love CLI. So Claude Code is nice.
This is such a great warning admonition that they have here. Do you see this one?
Oh yeah.
Warning: you may get nerd sniped. Your productivity may increase when using Crush. You may find yourself nerd sniped when first using the application. If symptoms persist, join the Discord server and nerd snipe the rest of us.
Yeah, the Discord's been pretty funny. But yeah. I think the tooling is getting better. I think the models they're not overthinking as much now. There's still a lot though to be careful of when you're working with infrastructure. And I think that's just going to take more time to mature. So there's some parts of this that are still very immature. So,
did you take a look yet at Spacelift Inspect, Jeremy?
I haven't. It's on my
or
to-do
intent.
list.
I mean, not inspect, but intent. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't tried that yet. I was thinking about it at one point, and then I got pulled away. I'm actually pretty busy again. Working on new stuff. I need to check out the ECS v2 stuff that you were sharing earlier.
Yeah, it's a lot cleaner. Everyone got rid of all the corrupts that we didn't like about the previous ECS task implementation. Yeah. we'll do a demo on that soon. I'm just polishing off some things on the docs there and want to get the DX fully nailed before we do the next demo on the ECS.
Nice.
Begins.
I saw the time warning. Any other questions? I've been talking too much.
No, I think we are time for today. Thanks, everyone. We're going to wrap up here, and we'll be posting the recording to our YouTube channel in just a couple of hours. And let's see here. Yeah. Oh, there go my outro slides. Blank white screen. It's a blank slate. So if you want to get more engaged with our community, go to slack.cloudposse.com, or you can register for these live office hours at cloudposse.com/office hours. We host these calls every single week. We never miss a week. So if you have any questions, come join us, and see you guys next time. Take care.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you. Hey, good to see you, Eric. I haven't seen you for a while.